I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to different groups. One of the things that, we're really trying to get the word out there that Iowa Vocational Rehab Services, we have, our job candidates, the people that we work with, but we also, it's a two-part piece to this, and the other part is everybody else that's interested in Iowa Vocational Rehab Services. A lot of times that looks like employers. So we have two customers, basically, our job candidates and our employers. But let's face it, that the more that we get out there and speak with different groups, different organizations, the more known we are. And a lot of times, it's through word of mouth that we're able to do what it is that we do and kind of reach a broader audience. So thanks for allowing me to come speak today. We're going to be talking a little bit about assistive technology, obviously, and I'm hoping by the end of the presentation that we take a little bit of the mystery out of it. There are times that, it just seems to cause some anxiety with people when they think about assistive technology, and they seem to overlook some things that they have used that have been assistive towards them. And we started working with very simple things when we entered school, every one of us, or maybe even before that, in the sense of a crayon or a pencil or a pen. These are technologies that low tech, or some could say no tech or low tech, that have helped us in our ability to communicate. So the goal here today is to provide the coalition with information about Iowa Vocational Rehab Services, assistive technology resources. And these resources are available across the state. And hopefully we can improve the collaboration between both of our programs, especially as it relates to assistive technology. And I hope that we can take some of the mystery out of this assistive technology, and also let you know that there's a resource very close to wherever you are if you're in the state of Iowa. So, there were some questions posed about how are people using assistive technology during the pandemic. And, what I've really noticed here is that I'm seeing what at one time might have been termed an accommodation actually becoming universal. I believe that this pandemic, if there was a light at the end of the tunnel or something good that we could glean from it, it's really made a lot of us. We didn't have time to hang out in an uncomfortable place. We needed to start using technology, and we needed to start now. And just so happens that technology assisted all of us. I've seen it become universal. So what do I mean by that? We're utilizing technology today, such as our computers, Zoom meetings, our smartphones, earbuds, headsets, our computer cameras for Zoom, etc. For most staff within our agency, probably about 90%, maybe even more, maybe it's 95, I don't remember the exact number. They're utilizing this because they're working at home, where at one time it would have required an accommodation request to get. This pandemic has posed situations for all of us. If you look at it in the sense of the unknown, none of us know how our immune system particularly would deal with this. So for a lot of us, we erred on the side of caution, safety, to try to stop or slow down the spread of this because of an unknown, a limitation. And that limitation is what we don't even know about our own immune systems. So we decided that we were going to go home. And to do that, because of that limitation, that unknown, we needed technology to help us overcome that limitation so that we could do our job, do our tasks. And if you think about it, that happened really, really quick. So about March, our agency said, if you feel you have the need to go home and work from home and you can pull it off, we will be supportive of it. And within about 2 weeks time frame, people were using technology in a way they never thought that they were going to use it before. And they had to learn it and learn it fast. So prior to the pandemic, someone with a compromised immune system may have at one time requested to work from home. Now most of us are working from home. Is our equipment, our assistive tech, is it assistive technology or simply technology or universal design? And we're seeing this more and more and more in the world today, where at one time we thought it was actually assistive technology. Turns out it was a good idea and it was beneficial and it helped anyone that was using it to be more productive. You know, take your smartphones nowadays and the apps that are on your smartphone. It's much more than just a phone. I think we could all agree. And they've really incorporated this universal design, voice to text software and applications, and how that's benefited, you know, a large majority of us. And if you want to think about that, you know, there was a time when I just thought that was the oddest thing. I was watching, I think 2020, and they were talking about people in Sweden, I believe is where it was, and they hardly ever talked on the phone anymore. They were all texting. Now this is before it came here and became so popular, and I thought, boy, isn't that the oddest thing? But I can tell you personally, and working with this younger generation, that as we all know, if you want to reach your kids, a lot of times you better not call them because they're not going to pick up the phone. But if you want to hear from them, shoot them a text. And so there's an example of where voice to text could be beneficial. And guess what? Not only does it help those with hearing loss, with the deaf or hard of hearing population, it can help all of us. It can be beneficial for all of us. So how's it working?
Bob, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Your slides aren't advancing?
Oh, they're not. They are on mine. I wonder why they aren't on yours. What in the world is going on? Let's see. How about now? Did it advance for you?
There you go.
Okay, well, thank you. Perfect interruption for me. You have to do it that way.
Thank you.
All right. So how's it working? Many organizations are finding they're doing quite well. And I don't know, anyone can chime in here. Have the majority of you moved to working from home, or is everybody still working in the office? And if you are working from home, how's it working for you? Have you found it to be more productive or less, or what's your thoughts? This is a chance anyone can chime in if they're brave enough.
I'm brave enough.
Yeah.
So I currently work at the office. I'm an administrative assistant at Access to Independence, as a matter of fact.
Mm-hmm.
So I cannot answer your question exactly how it's affected me working at home. I really haven't. I think the big difference I'm noticing is we don't have any actual individuals coming in.
Mm-hmm.
To the place of business. It's now pretty much handled by phone call, by email. I'm not getting that. The whole time I've worked here, I think I've only had like one walk-in in 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
One. And I think before COVID, I think the average was probably maybe more like 6, 7 a week probably.
And so how about with coworkers? Do you have any coworkers that are working from home, and have they shared with you how that's going for them?
Yes. So what we are doing a rotation. Myself and 2 other people are here each day, so max number 3. As for how they're handling at home, they really haven't said, but I haven't really inquired about that. So maybe I might have to check in on that when I have a free opportunity.
Yeah. We've had information shared with us with our agency that some of the staff are feeling that they're actually more productive now. They can work. They're not disturbed, you know, and I don't mean that in a negative way. Once they were able to incorporate their technology at home, they found that there aren't the normal distractions, you know, a coworker stopping in to chat and they stop in to chat with a coworker. And that's something that I worked at the Clayton County office building prior to going home, and my office happened to be right in the middle of the building. And so people would stop in and, you know, they were going on their break, so they just stop in to say hi or whatever. And little did they know that 3 other people had just left before them. So this transition to home for me and for some of my coworkers has actually been beneficial. Now, where that's not necessarily beneficial is you may find yourself sitting at your desk all day and not moving from it, and that can have complications because you're not up moving around. So regarding IVRS, we continue to provide services just almost like we did before. And at times, we feel that we're even providing them even better than we did in the past. And it is totally because of the use of what at one time might have been considered assistive technology that is simply technology that we're using. Now, we've increased our knowledge base as it relates to both assistive technology, or AT, but also information technology, and we've learned it fast. So that's what I was wondering about, any experiences that you all may have found yourselves in, where did you have to make that transition home, and did it open up some technology and some experimentation that you may not have done in the past? And I'm curious if that has been the case with anyone that's on the call today, or if it's basically been, you know, business as usual. I think that we could probably all come to the conclusion that our ability to use Zoom or Google Meets, or you name the venue, we've become a lot more proficient at that since this pandemic. So this happened across our nation basically in record time. Adversity caused us to react, and to react fast. And I wonder, you know, it's something to ponder, if you think it would have happened that quickly, at least, under any other circumstance. And does it need to happen fast for us? And my answer to that is, it really did. And what this pandemic brought out, which I believe is making us better as an agency, Iowa Vocational Rehab Services, not only as it relates to assistive technology, but as it is a reflection of all of the services that we provide. If when we transitioned from our home office or our offices to our home offices, we had a need for technology, we had a need for services, we had a need for assistance, assistive technology, and we needed it fast. And if the person answering the phone in our IT department, or our supervisors, or our administrators would not have answered their phone, or would have gotten back to us in 2 weeks, or would have forgotten to call back or follow up at all, how would that have impacted us personally as vocational rehab staff that needed technology, needed assistance, needed services, and we needed them fast? Well, it wouldn't have worked. So what that allowed us to do was to gain a better sense of urgency when looking at our job candidates, and they have a need, they have a limitation, They're looking for services or assistive technology to help them overcome that limitation so they can do the task. And how fast should we provide that service to them? What is acceptable? And I ask staff within our agency to reflect back and think, how fast did you need that when the pandemic came on and you moved because of our limitation, us not knowing how our immune systems would react? How fast did we need services, assistive technology, so that we could overcome that limitation and do that task? And I think all of us from an agency standpoint have a better understanding of that sense of urgency, and we can empathize with our job candidates and even employers when they reach out to us and they may seem like there's some anxiety or there's some frustration in the process because things aren't moving as fast. I think this whole pandemic has given us a better sense of that sense of urgency. Okay, so when I'm looking for accommodations or assistive technology, no tech, low tech, high tech, I think of this, and I'm going to talk about this. This is since I took over this position back in August of 2015, I try to keep things in perspective by looking at this. What is the task? What is the limitation? And what is the accommodation? So TLA, what's the task? It's vocationally relevant. What's the limitation imposed on by disability? And now let's look at that accommodation to overcome that limitation so they can do that task. And so that keeps us on track, because here at Iowa Vocational Rehab Services, we have to be able to separate things out that are what are vocationally relevant needs. So this TLA is a way that I look at things. And we'll move along. I think you're going to find out that there are a lot of things that are vocationally relevant. And I'm going to give you examples of over the last couple months of exactly what it is that we considered assistive technology. What are the real viable technological issues that we dealt with here at Vocational Rehab. And that's kind of how I like to do my training. I don't want to come up with a hypothetical. Why not? Let's talk about the things that we really deal with here at Voc Rehab. So getting started. How do we start assessing for technology? Where do we start? And so I say getting started, or who do we start with? And can you listen? You'd be amazed at the information that you can gather as the state of Iowa's assistive technology specialist by simply listening. And I say as we start this process, we're going to be looking at tasks, limitations, and accommodations. As we start this process, the first person I start with is the job candidate or the student, depending on what their age is and when we pick them up. So I always start with the job candidate and the student, and I do a whole lot of listening, way more listening than talking. I listen to their natural supports as well. I listen to the employer, listen to the school. I take a look at and listen to the people that have had input on the individualized education plan. What does it say? And then I look around and I wonder, is there anyone else or anywhere else to gather information on this particular person based on their limitations so that we can help them ultimately obtain, maintain, promote within, and live as independently as possible. So then I go back to that TLA as I was talking to these people. Okay, what is the task? Who's got input here? What's the limitation? And the supports can be so beneficial, because sometimes we, and I'll say we, I went through vocational rehab as well, so had some significant back problems, went through vocational rehab. One of the things that I, or we as people with disabilities, don't like to do is tell you about our disabilities. Who wants to talk about their limitations? And you know, sometimes we have a tendency to minimize those limitations. And it's our natural supports. A mother, a father, a spouse, a brother or sister can say, no, you're kind of minimizing that. Here's what's going on. And that information can be so valuable, because I'm, you know, speaking for myself and people I've worked with, we'd much rather tell you about the things we can do than those things that we cannot do. So another thing that really weighs heavily is what has worked in the past. And this is kind of in particular for students exiting high school, going on to some type of post-secondary training. Sometimes I'm faced with this. Johnny is getting ready to start his freshman year of college. As a matter of fact, he's starting on Monday, and we want to know what is all the latest and greatest assistive technology out there that could be helpful for him in taking notes as he starts college Monday. And, you know, this is going to be a new environment, first time going off to college, living on their own, whatever the situation is, brand new, nothing's the same. Why would we want to introduce at that point in time all the newest, latest, and greatest technological advances that may or may not be helpful to this student? So I say, let's start here. How was the student in high school? What did they use? Oh, a great student, and they had a note taker, and they used Notability, or they used a smart pen, and it just worked awesome. Well, why wouldn't we continue on with that then if it worked awesome, instead of now venturing into this whole new exploratory process at this time? I'm not saying we never got to go there or we never can go there. I'm just saying at this particular time. So when you want to start exploring new and latest and greatest things out there, one, have you done any research on it? Two, shouldn't we try that between maybe the sophomore and junior year of high school, or junior year and senior year of high school, or maybe do some exploration with that during the summer between the senior year of high school and college, and not right now as the student's getting ready to take off? So it's really, really important to look at what has worked well in the past. Is there any chance that assistive technology or accommodations have already been identified or are already successfully in place? And if so, then what? Do we continue utilizing those things that have worked because historically they have and we've gotten great benefits? Or do we try something? Do we invent the wheel and try something new? And all of this is fluid. This is all based on a conversation with the job candidate, their supports, employers, school, teachers, and anyone else that's of value. So let me see how far I jumped ahead here. Okay, so now the search for accommodations, this is how we do it. Here's some of the resources that worked, and it's not really rocket science. It's you know, kind of some common sense stuff, but it does take a little bit of practice and knowing of resources. So basically, the first thing I look at is what has worked in the past. And is there a need to reinvent the wheel? And sometimes the answer is yes. If that's the case, we should be having those conversations, you know, when we have time to explore, because the fact of the matter is the chances of identifying a piece of assistive technology that's going to be beneficial to the job candidate the first time out of the box is very slim. Okay, it's almost like when we see a type of exercise equipment that's advertised on TV and we purchase it and it's going to change everything. And then if it's like me, 2 years later, it didn't take 2 years to get there either. you can really hang clothes on it in an efficient manner. And that's what that exercise equipment is really being used for. So you want to look at those things that have worked in the past and then explore or try anytime you can that new technology. And it's also important to make sure that the person you're working with has a drive and a determination to try and explore that new stuff. So we want to kind of get their input on how motivated they are to try that new accommodation. The other thing that we do is I encourage people to look at the Job Accommodation Network, or JAN is commonly referred. And if you go to JAN, the Job Accommodation Network, they've got a section called A to Z disabilities. And so if it's, anxiety or diabetes or arthritis or you name it, you can click on that and it will provide you with a whole lot of different accommodation options. The other thing that is really, really awesome about the Job Accommodation Network is you can reach out and you can contact them with your question, and usually within 24 hours you get a really nice description of some options back from a representative from JAN. So I utilize the Ask JAN option quite often. So I cannot stress enough the value of the Job Accommodation Network. It's valuable to employers, it's valuable to job candidates, it's valuable to voc rehab counselors. The other thing, this is the world we live in now. You really can Google almost anything that you want to know about. And so if you're looking for accommodations for left side paralysis in a welding environment or something, you can Google that. So, Google things that you're interested in. Or if you've found out about the 2 GB Echo Smart Pen that may be an option, simply Google that and you can, watch videos on that. You can see how it's rated. So Google is a good tool. The other thing is YouTube. You can YouTube these items. And so you would search for the item that you're interested in YouTube. And this is when you're maybe exploring with your job candidate and, hey, would you be interested in a smart pen? Well, I don't know. What is a smart pen? Okay, well, let's take a look at this. And you can see some reviews by people who actually use them. That's where I find Google and YouTube so valuable, is because their input a lot of times are provided by the people who have actually utilized it, and doesn't necessarily limit you to the manufacturer who's going to only tell you the great things about that assistive technology. So Google, YouTube, I can tell you if it's about communication limitations with either speaking or hearing, a wonderful, wonderful resource is Telecommunications Access Iowa. You can go right to them and you can contact them, but they really specialize in providing communication options for people who are deaf, hard of hearing, or have speech limitations. Can't underestimate how valuable they are too. It's a great, great resource. Iowa Compass is another great resource if you are looking for assistive technology options to see if there's something out there maybe for sale or some recommendations as well. You can go to Iowa Compass. And then the other thing that we have that it's open to you all, okay? It's a service that we provide, and we have IVRS, Assistive Technology, local liaisons. So I'm the statewide assistive technology specialist, okay? But we also have local liaisons, and I train them and I work with them. We have 15 of them across the state of Iowa, and you're going to get their contact information here. And I would encourage you, if you have assistive technology questions, that you can reach out to them as well. So your IVRS Assistive Technology local liaison, there's no cost for that. They're available to you, to employers, to employees, and our job candidates. So feel free to reach out to them, and I will be providing you with their contact information. And I'll also provide you with my contact information as well. So you're going to have a lot of resources if you start with what worked in the past and work your way through the JAN website, do a Google search, YouTube, Telecommunications Access Iowa, the Assistive Technology local liaisons, the free service that we're there to work with you and help you, and all the way to me. And then I want to also give you examples. Here's what we've been dealing with assistive technology. And these are vocationally relevant, okay? This has to do with work. So over the last 2 months, the questions, the inquiries, the research that I've done to be helpful to people have dealt with workstation ergonomics. And this dealt with working from home. Okay, we have our offices set up, they're ergonomically set up, and all of a sudden now you're sitting at home on the couch with your laptop in your lap, and you are wondering why your neck hurts and your hip hurts, and etc. So a lot of inquiries and training on workstation ergonomics from working from home, and we talk about setup, from setting up your home workstation, headsets, adjusting your desks and your chairs, utilizing voice to text software or voice commands rather than typing, especially if you're not in an ergonomic situation. We talk about home modifications, ramps, bathroom mods, grab bars, railings, door widening, and universal accessible design for new construction. So is anybody brave enough to venture out there and tell me how in the world a home modification, even if the person is not working from home, how in the heck could that be related to employment? Anyone have any input there?
It improves like overall functionality or quality of life, which impacts work. So it's considered allowable.
That could. And here's the other thing about it is, you know, if a person can't get out of their home, how in the world are they going to be able to go to work? You know, so we start looking at things basically from the time a person opens their eyes in the morning until they go to bed at night. And how can that be related to work? And I ask you to kind of think about that yourselves as well. What do you do from the time you wake up in the morning, get yourself ready to go to work, come home, go to bed? What could you take out of that? What could you not do and still be able to work? You know, if a person can't safely bathe and they're working in an office setting, I say anybody that would argue that fact, do this. Don't bathe for a week and continue to go to work and see if that impacts you either directly or indirectly, you know. Or the other thing that we'll talk about in the next slide has to do with vehicle modifications. And so I think you should be able to safely bathe, be able to get in and out of your home in order to be able to work, especially if you're not working from home. Vehicle modifications. And there are some times that we run into some people when I'm doing my training and they say, why would you have to modify a vehicle? Why can't they just use public transportation? There's public transportation out there. Okay, then I say, I would encourage you then for the next 90 days. No, 60. Better yet, how about for the next 30 days, if you don't think they need a vehicle mod because they can take public transportation, how about you take public transportation for the next 30 days? That's all you'll use to get to and from work and run your errands and get your kids to daycare and do all that. And at the end of that, we'll talk about if they would benefit from having their own vehicle and us providing, assistance with modifying vehicles. I haven't had one person that's wanted to take me up on the challenge of doing 30 days, and I wouldn't want to, because the fact of the matter is public transportation is not as reliable as we wished that it would be, especially when you take into all sorts of other dynamics that we have to do as families. For some of us, you can almost name any situation though where it just is not a feasible option for us in Iowa. And there may be an exception to it, and you could tell me about it, but I'm telling you that's the exception. So some of those vehicle modifications that we've helped with that are technological assistive devices include many things, but they start with a driver assessment and driver training. They've dealt with providing ramps into vehicles, lowering floors, putting spinner knobs on steering wheels, and electronic mobility control, or EMC, AVIT systems. So you might go, what in the world is an EMC AVIT system? I would encourage you, you can simply go to YouTube and type in Margie driving EMC AVIT, and you'll get the PowerPoint on this too. But that is going to give you a real good indication of just some of the capabilities that people are able to do because of assistive technology in the form of vehicle modifications. People can drive a vehicle now with a joystick, and it's amazing, and it provides them a level of freedom that they just would never ever get utilizing public transportation. We've also assisted with computer, software, and application recommendations. Those are some others. Some other examples of AT inquiries over the last 2 months that I've assisted with are modifications to ag equipment, such as fabricating a ladder with handrails for a combine for corn picking season that's coming up, corn and soybeans. A person needed an actual stairwell with handrails because he was a stroke survivor. And so we were able to work with Easter Seals Rural Solutions and identify someone that could fabricate that. Now, we at IVRS, we don't have people that fabricate things, but we work with, contractors or individuals that are willing to do that. So other things that I worked on in the past 2 months was comparing and contrasting the John Deere, Polaris, and the Can-Am side by side. So in this situation, we actually assisted a person in obtaining a side by side to run their small business, which involved going and bidding contract work for the DNR to mow and put in fence lines, things like that. And the person had a pretty significant back impairment, and they just could not get down in that rough terrain. A tractor just wouldn't work. So we were able to, compare and contrast those and go out with the bidding process and assist financially. So this individual could obtain a Can-Am side by side is what they ended up landing with at the end of our compare and contrasting. And Action Sit Stand Track Chair, and you could Google that too, Action Sit Stand Track Chair. It's basically a wheelchair that has tracks on it like a skid loader or like an army tank or whatever. It has the tracks. It allows the person to go from the seated to the standing position. And this was for an individual who works a farm, and due to paraplegia is not able to do that. And this has just really, really opened up some opportunities to contribute on the farm in a way that just could not have been done with anything less than the track chair. And then, there's been inquiries about smart pens and the application notability, which historically speaking, with this newer generation, of course, you can find an exception to it, but the most of the time I find people, once they YouTube and Google notability and play around with it, They choose the Notability over the Smart Pen. I've seen that every single time so far, and I don't know exactly what to attribute it to, other than one, I love Notability, but two, this younger generation now, they keyboard more than they write. You know, you're not going to get a handwritten letter for the most part, probably from many of the students in high school today. It's just, it seems that the task of writing is not really something that they prefer to do. So as a note-taking option, they seem to choose the Notability over the Smart Pen. And of course, feel free to Google Notability application if you want to learn more about that. That's basically for our Mac or our iPhone, our iOS systems. And then there's Evernote, which is more for the Microsoft, but Notability seems to win out over that Smart Pen every time. I've gotten inquiries about prosthetics, you know, for people that have dealt with amputations, and then some requests to compare and contrast Apple Watches. And one of the things when it comes to computers nowadays, the customer service now, be it Microsoft or Apple, a lot of the recommendations that I make, and I'm willing to do it with the job candidate or with the job candidate and their counselor, or if they've got the intellectual ability to do it, you know, we want to allow people the freedom to make decisions on their own and exhibit as much of independence as they want. I usually put them right in touch with the customer service at either Apple or Microsoft and say, hey, talk to them about what you're looking for, what you'd like. And you've got the actual customer service rep there that is very, very knowledgeable in the latest and greatest that's out there. And they can, you know, gain their own sense of insight on some of this technology that they want and work through that, which tends to lead to better results in the end. And then I've also been involved with hearing aid acquisition as well with the agency. So there are real live examples of assistive technology that I've been dealing with over the last 2 weeks that seem to make big impacts with our job candidates. So here we go. What does IVRS offer related to assistive technology supports? This is for job candidates, mutual job candidates. It's for employers, it's for employees, and it's for you listening today. Here's our contacts and where they are located. So you could find an assistive technology liaison near you. And there's their name and their phone numbers, so you can reach out directly to them if you'd like. If you have further questions or want to explore some technology, just want to pick their brain. And then there is my contact information as well, and I encourage you to reach out to me. You can call me. Email me is always good because I never delete an email until I handle the inquiry on it. So if you happen to contact me and I'm traveling across the state, you may have my attention right then and there. And then 4 phone calls later and I get back to the home office and it's gone, but it isn't if you email me. So that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, feel free, you can ask. I've got a few more minutes, or you can email me, or you can call me, whatever you'd like.
Do folks have any questions for Bob? You can unmute and ask Bob or put them in the chat box.
Yes, I have a quick question.
Yes.
The presentation, will the presentation notes be available?
This presentation, will I provide that? You mean the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yes, it is. I'm going to send that out right after this.
Okay.
You
need my contact information for it, or?
You can.
I'll go.
Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is Amy Dessenberg-Wines. We'll go ahead and send that out to everybody with the recording too, so folks can have access to it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Amy. That was what I was waiting for.
Thank you.
We have a
Bob, I've got
question. Oh, go ahead.
sorry. I was just going to
No.
read a question for you, Bob. It's from Kyra, and she says, could you remind me of the dollar limit on the amount of support VR can provide an individual?
Okay, so we don't have a magic dollar limit or anything. That's not what we have. We are looking for what is vocationally needed. That's what we look at. I mean, we do have an annual budget that's many pay grades above me that determines that. But when people come to us, we really are looking at what's the task they're trying to accomplish, what's their limitation, and what is the appropriate assistive technology to help them overcome that limitation so they can do that task.
She says, thank you, Bob.
Bob, I was curious, sometimes we can see assistive technology or as you pointed out, technology just in itself as a great resource for supporting individuals in community employment. But sometimes there's a need to support individuals with understanding how to utilize it and operate it or that sort of thing. Is that something that Voc Rehab can assist a job seeker with? Is kind of that training around utilization of technology?
Absolutely. I'm so glad that you brought that up. That is so important. That's such an important piece. If we provide the technology and we don't provide the training that goes along with it, it has a very, very high chance of not being utilized. And so when we're working with our job candidates and we determine that type of technology, we also can include the training. Now, most of the time we contract that training out because we just don't have the staff that can put in the amount of training that's normally needed. And sometimes that can be quite extensive. And to give you an example of that, I tell people, think back. For me, it was a long time ago, but if you can kind of think back all the way back to like kindergarten or even preschool, when we first got a pencil put in our hand, how long did we practice with that? I think I still had writing classes going on in 5th grade. It's the amount of time, and that was a pencil. And think about our smartphones and the amount of time that we have to spend with those things to get proficient in one aspect of it, let alone the multiple aspects of it. So a very long answer to your question is not only do we help with the acquisition, we also need to help with the training, and we can do that, even if we have to contract out.
And would that include, Bob, let's say you have a community provider who's supporting that job seeker, would that include if the job seeker wanted either staff that they might be working with through an employment service provider, or if they have a family member or an educator that might be supporting them, can they also access some of that support with VR as VR is trying to provide some of that training to the individual?
So yeah, everything is negotiable, so there's no black and white on this, but if it's a support, natural or, a provided support at this point in time, unless we bring them all along together, so our job candidate would be there and their natural supports that would be helping the job candidate to continue to learn and understand that. If they need to be a part of that training as well, that's definitely something that we can have on the table.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for all the great information.
Oh, you're
Does
welcome.
anybody else have any other questions or comments for Bob? Bob, I want to thank you so much for your time and your work and putting this together and coming today and sharing all this great information and resources with us. I wanted to let folks know, I'm going to put in the chat box right now our In October, we're going to be doing a two-part session called Got Implicit Bias, which is a race and equity training for transition or employment support spaces. And that is going to be provided from Rama McCoy McDeed is our presenter from Central Iowa Center for Independent Living. And we will be sending out registration information for folks on that, but it will be October 21st and October 28th. And we, although I called this a lunch and learn today, that's actually going to be from 3 to 4:15 because we were really hoping that if there were educators who wanted to participate, that might be a time of day that, exactly, it's a late lunch, a time of day that they might have more availability to participate. So the other thing I'd like to ask is if any of you have any suggestions or ideas of topics that you think would be good for us to try to provide a speaker or an expert on a subject, if you would just send that my way or Jess's way, or you can put it in the chat box, we'd sure appreciate it, because really what we're trying to do right now is just provide information and support given our current needs in this current climate. So please share with us any ideas or suggestions. I want to thank Bob again for all his help and Jess for all of her support, and all of you for joining us. I hope you have a fabulous day, and I'm looking forward to connecting again with you soon. Thank you much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks, Bob.
Yep. Thank you.